The Chaim Bloom era is officially over, but what will that be remembered as? What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Seat Radio. My name is Corbin, and yet another losing season is about to end for the Boston Red Sox. And honestly, it's just been flat out miserable lately. Bad baseball, and over the last 2 days, you've watched the Tampa Bay Rays clinch a playoff spot and the Baltimore Orioles clinch a playoff spot right in front of your face, which makes it even worse, right? Which is why I think I and a lot of Red Sox fans are really excited about what this next chapter of Red Sox baseball could look like, right? After the Chaim Bloom era, what do the Boston Red Sox look like? But before we get to that era, I'm also curious what this Chaim Bloom era in Boston will be remembered by, right? What is Chaim Bloom's legacy with the Boston Red Sox, and what is his ultimate impact on this team? That's what we're going to try and figure out today, because what we're doing in today's video is we're deep diving into everything Chaim Bloom did during his time with the Boston Red Sox to ultimately try and figure out, one, what he'll be remembered as, and two, what his legacy will be in this Red Sox organization. But before we get into that, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one. Let's get into it. I think when we're looking at what the true legacy of Chaim Bloom is, we need to look at the whole picture, right? I think a lot of people focus on what the success of the big league club looks like under a certain leadership team, right? And I think that's a very valid thing to look at, and we'll definitely be looking at what the major league club was able to do under Chaim Bloom, but there's more to his job title than just the 40-man day-to-day operations, right? As the head of baseball operations for an organization, you're not only in charge of what the 40-man roster does, or the 26-man roster does, but you're in charge of how the entire organization looks at baseball, right? How they research and develop players, how they look at trades and free agent signings, how they do essentially everything within your organization. So we got to look at the bigger picture here. What I want to start with is Chaim Bloom's focus on development. It was one of the biggest tasks given to Chaim Bloom when he was brought to the Boston Red Sox, and he actually did a lot for this part of the Red Sox organization. There is a fantastic article written by Jake T. O'Donnell a few months ago from Beyond the Monster. The link to that article will be in the description, but in there he details how Chaim Bloom's effect on the Red Sox entire organization has led to the development of a lot of key minor league players. And in that article, there are a few bullet point facts that I want to put on this video. The big ones being Chaim Bloom increased the size of research and development staff from 14 to 33, which is much more on pace with the way Major League Baseball is going. Now, I know there are a lot of you out there who say, oh, Red Sox need to get away from the nerds and analytical stuff. They need to get back to hard-nosed, sort of gut baseball, but that's not the way Major League is trending, right? If you look throughout Major League Baseball, teams like the Dodgers, the Rays, the Braves, the Astros, even the Orioles are very research and development heavy, and that's the way baseball is trending. The Red Sox were behind in that aspect. With Chaim Bloom coming in 2019, he was able to broaden that research and development department and really bring the Red Sox back up to speed with the rest of Major League Baseball. He also added development coaches at each level of the system to sort of be the middleman between the analytics and the coaching staff, which is really important, right? You can have all the analytics you want, you could be super analytical, but if you can't figure out how to translate that into legitimate baseball terms to figure out exactly how to implement those analytics into the game, it doesn't really matter, right? The 33 people added to the Boston Red Sox mean nothing if you can't translate it to on the field play, and that's exactly what Chaim did by adding these sort of research and development coaches to every level of the system. He hired 3 development staffers who brought along the workings of driveline baseball into the Red Sox system. It's a player performance facility that focuses a lot on biomechanics of a player's swing specifically, and it's something that is sort of regarded as sort of the pristine way to go about hitting, right? It's sort of the big name when it comes to developing and swings and swing patterns and stuff like that, and it's actually helped a lot of minor league players. Marcelo Myers talked about driveline, Roman Anthony has talked about driveline, Blaze Jordan has talked about driveline, right? They have been able to utilize these 3 guys added into the Red Sox system to really improve a lot of the top minor league players in the Red Sox system and really bring them to another level, which is obviously super important when we're looking at the ultimate legacy of a person. Essentially, what Chaim Bloom did between 2019 and 2023 was completely revamp the way the Red Sox go about research and development, and what it's led to is a lot of success in the Red Sox organization with younger players, right? We're seeing it at the big league level with with Casas, Bayo, Duran, Whitlock, Houck, all these young type players who are utilizing all of these analytics and these driveline statistics and stuff like that to improve their game. It's also working in the minor league system as well. 4 top 100 prospects this year, guys like Miguel Blaze and Yoel Cespedes looking to knock on that door of top 100 in 2024, and the Red Sox are in a really great place development-wise compared to what they were in 2019. Now, one thing I see a lot in Red Sox Nation is a straight-up division of prospects, right? Based on who was able to draft them or sign them or whatever, right? Because a lot of the time, what we'll hear is, oh, these guys are just Dave Dombrowski guys. Dave Dombrowski was successful because he drafted these guys, or Chaim Bloom was successful because he drafted or signed these guys. But that's just sort of the tip of the iceberg, right? Signing these guys is like the very first step in a very long journey to get them to Major League Baseball. There's so much more to the development of a prospect than just, oh, this GM signed him, right? Because once they get into the Red Sox organization, it's up to the system itself to improve these players, get these players ready, either going towards or at the Major League level to make them productive baseball players. And I think what Chaim Bloom did during his time here is increase that ability to develop, increase that ability to analyze and put a value on certain different things that allow these players to reach a level that we have not seen in the Red Sox system in quite some time. And I think this aspect of what Chaim Bloom's job was is sort of completely forgotten when we're talking about the overall legacy of Chaim Bloom. And I think when we're looking at what he did best in the Red Sox organization, it's this by an absolute mile. He brought the Red Sox essentially into 21st century. He allowed them to sort of utilize these tools and start developing players and really make them a powerhouse in terms of their pipeline and young player production. But obviously, this was not the only part of Chaim Bloom's job, so let's also take a look at what Chaim Bloom was able to do at the Major League level and ultimately what his legacy will be there. I think when it comes to what Chaim Bloom was able to do at the Major League level, one of the biggest things I think a lot of people look at is his trade ability, right? Whether or not he did well successfully on the trade market. I think there were some wins for Chaim Bloom and the front office while he was in charge in terms of trade. The Pivetta for Workman and Hembry trade worked out really well. Schwarber at the time was a fantastic get for this team. Robles overall, that trade ended up working out well. There are 2 trades right now that I think really stand out, and that's the Christian Vasquez trade for Manuel Valdez and Wilyer Abreu. Both of those guys look like they could somehow fit into the future of the Boston Red Sox. Jake Diekman for Reese McGuire worked out really well for the Red Sox, right? There were definitely some wins in terms of trading in the time of Chaim Bloom, but there were obviously some losses as well. I think ultimately, just straight statistic-wise, the Hunter Renfroe trade has not worked out for the Boston Red Sox, although I will say there's a reason Hunter Renfroe is bouncing around from team to team right now, and it's certainly not about on-field performance, so I don't know if we could consider that a true loss. And then obviously the biggest one is Mookie Betts, right? I think ultimately when it comes to trading, Mookie Betts will be who Chaim Bloom is remembered for, which isn't really fair to Chaim. I think ownership, who didn't want to pony up and fully pay Mookie Betts, ended up being the reason Mookie Betts got traded. But either way, Chaim Bloom was the one who executed it. And right now, what you're looking at is Alex Verdugo and Connor Wong, with Alex Verdugo most likely being traded in the offseason. So you're going to have to figure out what the value of what you got from Alex Verdugo plus Connor Wong is in terms of how bad you lost this trade. But either way, right, that was a big loss. And I think there are a lot more trades that went down here that ended up being sort of flat, even trades, right? Eric Hosmer coming over and then being DFA'd, Tommy Pham coming over, right? Those are kind of guys, especially last year, that really didn't have that big of an impact on the Red Sox and sort of made their way off outside of this team. And ultimately, those ended up being sort of a net zero result for the Red Sox. And then on top of that, too, I think there were mistakes with the overall goals of deadlines over the last couple of years, right? 22 was a really bad, in terms of actual trading potential, year for the Boston Red Sox. All you had to do was trade either JD or Evaldi to get under your luxury tax and reset yourself going into 2023, and you simply could not get that done because you were hesitant, which is what we'll talk about in a second, to make a move. 2023, you didn't supplement this team at all, and you ended up sinking this team altogether, right? And again, I don't think there were any super huge wins on the open market this year in terms of starting pitching, but anyone who could have gone 5-6 innings regularly for the Red Sox during that time after the trade deadline would have helped this team immensely, and it just simply did not happen, right? And I think ultimately when it comes to trades, those are going to be the 2 things that are remembered. It's going to be Mookie Mookie Betts. It's going to be not getting under the luxury tax in 2022, and it's going to be not supplementing this team in 2023. But ultimately, when we're looking at what Chaim Bloom was able to do trading wise, it's sort of a little bit of a net zero, right? It's not either way positive or negative. There were misses, there were wins, and there were a ton of trades that just ended up being absolutely nothing. But the overall sort of philosophy here with trading was that you simply could not figure out which direction to go, and it ended up sinking your season 2 times in 2 different years. The last thing I want to look at today is roster construction, which encapsulates everything Chaim Bloom did at the major league level, right? That's trades, that's free agency, that's everything combined into whether or not the Red Sox were successful. Looking year to year here, 2020 was an absolute disaster, but I don't know how much of that was on Chaim Bloom. 2021 was fantastic. Everything clicked and went the right way for the Red Sox, especially at the end of the season. 2022 was a bit of a disaster, and 2023, you started out really well, and for the most of the year it went well, and then ultimately you ended up crashing and burning and finishing with your second losing season in a row. Now, I think the biggest theme here, the sort of overarching theme here with these teams, is that you were always missing one specific area, and there was always a glaring hole in this roster construction. In 22, it had to do with pitching and defense. I think defense realistically was sort of your Achilles heel the entirety of Chaim Bloom's era, but pitching wise, in 2022, what happened was you ended up relying on a lot of aging veterans to get you through an entire major league season with very little rotational depth, and it ended up sinking your team. Plus, the bullpen in 22 was just flat out miserable. It was not a good 2022 year. It was not a good year for the bullpen in 2022. 2023, the bullpen's much better, but you're once again relying on these aging veteran players like Kluber, Paxton, and Sale to get you through an entire 2023 season. It just flat out did not work out for you, and yet again, you lost that sort of rotational depth. And I think those are sort of the 2 biggest things when it comes to roster construction for Chaim Bloom. He did well offensively almost every single year. You were a top team offensively in Major League Baseball, but you couldn't figure out the hole that you had in the pitching department, and it ended up sinking you a couple of different times in a couple of different seasons. And I think what that comes down to is indecisiveness. His inability to be decisive in the front office ended up hurting his ultimate roster construction. There were rumors of trades like Chris Sale being traded and getting rid of his salary so you could afford to get another bigger name pitcher in here. There were names like JD Martinez and Nate Eovaldi at the last year's deadline where you had opportunities to trade them and get some prospects in the system while getting under the luxury tax, and you couldn't figure out a decision. Ultimately, those trades went by the wayside. And when it comes to free agency, there's a reason over the last couple of years the Red Sox have been named the interest kings of Major League Baseball. It's because they were in on every single person, or they were interested in every single free agent, it felt like, but ultimately they could not come to a decision as to what to offer them, or they couldn't come to a decision over whether or not to go to the next level to get them here, and it ended up costing them a lot of free agents. Ultimately, when we're talking about Chaim Bloom's legacy with the Major League roster, the ultimate phrase is indecisiveness, right? Because even with guys that he did sign, there were stories about how he would obsess over his signings. Trevor Story, Masataka Yoshida, and even after they were signed, wonder whether or not this was the right move for the Red Sox. When you're talking about the legacy of Chaim Bloom, you can't talk about it without indecisiveness. But I do think that Chaim Bloom was given a bit of an impossible task here. I think what Chaim Bloom was brought in to do for the Boston Red Sox was completely restructure their organization when it comes to development and analytics and everything like that. I think he was in charge of cutting payroll, increasing the pipeline, all while still trying to be competitive in the hardest division in Major League Baseball. It's essentially saying, Chaim Bloom, we want you to rebuild this organization, but we don't want you to rebuild at the exact same time. At some point, Chaim Bloom had to pick a direction, and he simply could not do that, and that's what ultimately, in my opinion, ended up hurting Chaim Bloom in the long run. But when it comes to his overall legacy, I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a bit of a negative legacy because of everything that happened at the Major League level. But for me, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait 5 or 10 years. I want to see how these players develop that are coming up through the Red Sox system. I want to see how the things that he put in place within the Red Sox, the analytics departments, the liaisons, the restructuring of the organization worked in terms of creating a long-term successful team. And I don't know if we'll be able to get an answer to that in the next couple of years. That's going to be something where we're going to have to look back on in 5 or 10 years and see exactly how Chaim Bloom's plan worked out. But ultimately, when we're talking about the legacy of Chaim Bloom, right now it's a negative one. In my opinion, it's sort of dead in the middle. I think it's okay to be dead in the middle. Everyone's saying, Corbin, you need to pick a side. You need to be pro-Bloom or anti-Bloom. And I think there's a way to be dead in the middle here. And I think I'll always be dead in the middle, swayed one way or the other by how a lot of these prospects and the development that Chaim Bloom focused on in his time here with the Red Sox works out. But I think all in all, Chaim Bloom was one of, if not the most divisive front office executive that the Red Sox have ever had. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. What is Chaim Bloom's legacy with the Red Sox? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it somewhere in the middle? Let me know what you think Chaim Bloom will be remembered for as the front office executive for the Boston Red Sox. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. Helps these videos out a ton, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the red seats.